Hello, everyone. It is 12 o'clock. I think we are going to start right on time today because I see that we've got at least 21 people in the room already. I am Karima Goodwin. I am a board member for Food Service Women's Alliance. Welcome to July's monthly member meeting. Today, we're talking about a very important topic, empowering your earnings. So it's important to all of us because regardless of the stage of your career, it's always important to be able to take control of your financial future. One of the guiding principles of FWA is that we are focused on empowering all women to gain autonomy over their food service career growth. So this topic is right on time for our team. Today, we've got an incredible guest speaker, Angela Materano. She's the co-founder of and president of Orchid Holistic Search. So it's a boutique search firm and it's focused on natural products in the food industry. So not just food service industry, but in the food industry across multiple functions of different organizations. So they are really focused on building better brands and building a better for you culture. She's also a president and vice president of growth and culture at the Blanco y Negro, a women-led sustainable farm in Costa Rica. So she lives in Costa Rica with her family on their budding farm, which is incredible. Look at her beautiful background. So when we get onto Angela, you'll see her beautiful background. And she hosts retreats for executive women from all over the world to come so that they can focus on self-care and personal health. So, to no further ado, I want to introduce Angela so that she can get started and talk to us about empowering our earnings. Thanks, Angela.
Thank you, Karima. Thank you, everybody, for having me today. This is a topic that has had me so excited since I was reached out to a few weeks ago to speak at the July meeting. Uh, Empowering women has been an integral part of my career, recruiting over the past 15 years. Of course, Orchid places candidates from all backgrounds, but we do have a special lean towards elevating women in their careers. And a lot of that has to do with empowering candidates and empowering women along their journeys to making sure that they're earning what they're worth. So why does that matter? Why does equal pay matter? It can be sort of this nebulous, ethereal idea, but we need to be A, armed with the facts, and B, the why of why that matters. Knowledge is power. So I'm excited to share with you a little bit of what I've learned along the way with you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So, over the course of our careers, the pay disparity between men and women can be striking. As of 2023, women are still earning 82 cents on the dollar to our male counterparts. And we're not even going to touch today on the additional disparity with historically marginalized groups of women. So I'm not a math wizard, but I consulted my friend ChatGPT this morning to help me out with some math of how that looks from a meta perspective over the course of our career. So for easy math, we take that salary of 82K versus 100K for men. And factoring a 3% annual pay raise for both, which is somewhere around the lines of what we should be asking annually in terms of increases. Um, Over the span of a 40-year career, that is a career loss of $1.36 million for women. It's striking. And then if we factored in putting that additional 18K that we're currently missing out on into investment accounts, which have compound interest, that is a striking $3.5 million disparity over the course of a lifetime. Like huge. That is absolutely huge. So we really need to take a look at our career from a meta perspective, from our peak earning years, which can be in the 40s, right? And make sure that when we have those opportunities to ask for raises, we do so and we advocate for ourselves. So as I mentioned, annual pay raise, it could look anywhere from 2 to 5%. And then if we're looking at new opportunities outside of our current organizations, or even roles for promotion within our organizations, we can be looking at a 10 to 20% increase when we do that. So bottom line, we should be keeping ourselves open to opportunities, networking with folks all the time, Look, I know people feel fiercely loyal to their organizations, and that is a wonderful thing. But we cannot forget numero uno, which is caring for ourselves and making sure that we are advocating for those raises and making sure we're well networked. So it starts with facts, A, and then it starts with confidence. So the knowingness that women, as women, we give typically more to our organizations, more to our family, more to our social circles and communities than men. This can come in ways of, planning work events and parties. It can be being the note taker at meetings. It can be leading committees. In our communities, we're the one planning events. We're the one caring for children. We're the ones really taking on a lot of those additional household responsibilities. So how do we get more comfortable with money? And we need to be talking about it. So this is a great first step, but I encourage us all to be talking about money and getting comfortable with numbers with our friends, with our colleagues, with our teams, with our male counterparts. And, this is not just about us, right? We can feel like money is really personal, it's really individual, it's about our needs. And that is, that's a pretty deep emotional burden to carry. But what we're actually thinking about, if we take it all into perspective, we need to advocate for ourselves so that we're modeling that for future generations, for younger women coming into our companies, for our children, and the younger people in our families, next generations who are watching for us. And if we're not advocating for ourselves, you know, there's no one there that's going to be your career fairy. So we do have to get comfortable with that ask. Um, and in business, it can feel really personal to ask for more money, but we have to take a step back and remove ourselves from that picture and think in terms of a business. Um, think in terms of um, how we're asking and the strategy behind it. So I'm going to jump in and talk about like how we prepare for compensation negotiations and reviews. One major point is there's a lot of strategy to the timing of this. I'm not 100% sure in food service if y'all have the same sorts of category review periods, right? But in business and in sales, we're asking for those item reviews within our respective category review periods. Hopefully, our organizations do have annual employee review periods. So we need to think in terms of the big picture with that. If we're coming in off cycle and asking, it just might not be the right timing and it might not set us up for success. So that means that even if it's months away, your next review, we should be preparing. What we want to avoid is waiting until there's this angst, there's this personal financial responsibility that's creeping up, our bills and inflation, all this are creeping up, and then we ask at the wrong moment and set ourselves up not for the results that we're looking for. So in this, tracking data is super important, just like it is when you're fact-based selling. So a review is a chance to reiterate the value that we bring to our organizations. If we don't remember our big and small wins along the way, chances are our boss is probably not going to either. So we need to be thinking about what are we doing to grow our own personal toolbox of skills? Have we taken classes or courses? Have we been building strategic relationships? In which ways have we gone above and beyond in our role? And that again might mean planning and other non-specific job description related activities that we are putting our energy toward. Which KPIs and targets are we hitting? So this isn't just about the reviews. That's great, but this will also keep us sharp for interviews, both within and outside of our organization. As an interviewer, when I'm talking with candidates, I'm going to want to hire the ones who know their numbers. So that means I want to hear facts, figures, supporting evidence. So start writing down your accomplishments. And this can be like a journal. You could keep, a little notebook, a little journal, and just write down your wins. So that means when it's time to actually look at our resume and prepare for a review, we actually can be able to speak, confidently about what we've brought to the table. And then we need to also be up to date on our respective fields when it comes to compensation data. Not only do we need to know our personal value and what we're bringing, but how does that stack up across the industry? We need to take a few hours every quarter or so, dive in and do a little bit of research study. That means we could be reaching out to colleagues, peers, friends, and other organizations, both men and women, and talking candidly about compensation, looking for job postings for your role, similar roles, the roles that you're looking to be promoted into. Tools like Glassdoor, Indeed, and Salary.com can be helpful for this. So not only will arming ourselves with this data help us know what to ask for, but also speaking openly and looking at the numbers and talking about them. That'll eventually help us feel more confident when it's time to ask. Okay, so take a little sip here. Envision that we are going into our annual review. Let's say it's Monday. What are some key tenets that we can think of going into the meeting? One, set aside modesty. This is your time to shine. This is your time to brag. This is your time to make sure that your value is seen and heard. This is the time to discuss the impact of your work on the organization. Again, determining our market value and also making sure that the timing is right. Was it a great year? Perfect. Ask for the higher end of that raise. Have there been influences outside of our control? Maybe we ask for the lower end of these annual salary increase, and also making sure again that it's within the right time frame and context. Also, a major one, keep personal finances out of the discussion. We don't want to go into a meeting saying, oh, well, my rent was raised and this and that, and my expenses have gone up, and it's because, my daughter needs swim lessons. Take the personal out of the equation. You're an entity working within an organization, and you deserve to be asking for your worth within that organization. So also mindset going into these meetings is huge. So what can we do if our review, for example, is Monday? We can spend the weekend reviewing those notes in our journal. We can take time to breathe, to be in our bodies, to meditate a bit, to find some solitude, and to stand in our power. We also might ask a friend or a close colleague to allow us to practice the negotiation. And then, this is where some of my woo-woo tips and tricks, attracting abundance, come in. Affirmations. Get comfortable standing and looking at yourself in a mirror and affirming yourself. I am worthy. I am abundant. I am amazing at what I do. I care deeply. I give my all. And so we're now walking into this meeting, not only armed with our mindset, but our notes, our wins, and our asks. Most importantly, when it comes time to ask for that number, we're going to state our case without emotion, and then we're going to shut our mouths. It can be a very uncomfortable pause. But even with executive women, one thing I notice is that when I'm having just a basic open getting to know you conversation, I ask, what sort of compensation range would you like to be in? They'll say, well, 180, but if it's a great company, a great culture, and the benefits, they talk themselves out of it and tell you the bottom end of their number before you sit and just let the weight of that number stand on its own. So this can be uncomfortable. That's why I say practice, get comfortable speaking with others about it. And then again, it's a business ask. You're not asking your boss to personally give you money out of their pocket. It's a business negotiation, just like one that you'd have with a client. It can feel really personal, but it's really not. So companies have budgets built in for their employees to grow, or they should. And if your boss does end up saying it's not in the budget now, you're going to ask, when will it be? Because I'm ready to earn more. And then, so the biggest component to making sure we're paid our worth is for us to own that and to feel empowered. We spend on average a third of our adult lives working. And I don't know about you, but that's an immense amount of care and life force energy that we're all pouring into a company. And we need to feel worthy of earning every penny that we deserve. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I think we have some time set aside for that. And also happy to connect with all of you outside. You can follow me on LinkedIn, give me a little follow request, and I'm more than happy to connect with you.
So Angela, there's a point here in the chat that is such a good point, especially based off of what you said. And I wrote down several things to quote you. But Melissa says, it's really such good advice. Say a number and pause. But why is that so hard for so many of us?
Well, I think just generally speaking, people are uncomfortable in silence, and we're anticipating what the person's going to say. We're already thinking in our minds, maybe my boss doesn't think I'm worth it, or it's not going to be in the budget. We're already talking ourselves out of it. And even in general, like some of us go on walks, but we put on our podcast. We're always listening to something in our earbuds. We've always got a constant flow of information, and there's just not a lot of time to practice silence. So I think it's huge, just not only in a negotiation standpoint, but in general conversations, to get really comfortable with silence, to let what you said resonate and sink in.
Yeah, I love that. I also think it's okay for that other person to be uncomfortable. And as women, we don't really grasp that very well. If we see someone uncomfortable, we think it's our job to make them comfortable. So, Karima, I see you have a raised hand. Are you raising your hand intentionally?
I am. So I've got a question.
Yes.
Angela, great job. So, all incredible information. Wanted to ask, what is the most uncomfortable salary negotiation you've been a part of, whether yourself personally or one of your clients? And then how did you overcome the situation?
Oh gosh. Negotiations they're uncomfortable. We have to get comfortable with the fact that they are innately an uncomfortable topic for many people. I think one comes to mind, and this is a personal one for myself. It was a CEO of a company that I think was referred to me. I didn't reach out to them, they reached out to me. And after giving my presentation on working together, what an executive search looks like, the value I bring, he said, you'd probably get more business if you lowered your fees. And I just paused and I just looked at him and I said, this is why I do business with the right folks. Thank you so much for your time. And that was it.
Wow.
No, like, I'm
Whoa.
sorry. You never let a man tell you you should lower your value. I'm sorry, just find a different partner, but don't ever tell someone to lower their value.
Love it. Love it.
Awesome.
Leslie, I see your hand raised.
Hi. So my question is, what is the right time to have this conversation if your company does not have annual reviews like mine?
Mm. So if yours doesn't have annual reviews, they do have an annual budget review, right? So we have to
Well,
think about, like, what
sure.
is the total context of a financial year end. You'll have to know when your company's year end is, and when you kind of take a note of when the executives are sort of having their annual budget reviews, and that is the time right before those budget reviews. And if you don't know, you could ask around and try to find out. But I think, yeah, it's just pretty important in the context of an entire business to be strategic about it and to think, like, yes, the timing is really imperative for a lot of things, but especially if you're going to be asking for more money, it should be in the context of the right time frame. And if you do feel still that you haven't been able to decipher when that is, and you do want to ask, um, and your boss says it's not the right timing, well, okay, when is the right timing to have this conversation?
I was gonna jump in here too. Like I've been in a lot of startups where that wasn't built in super strong. I built it in for myself. So Whereas I said, hey, I need for my own performance to have a yearly check-in on how I am doing, how I'm performing against goal. And that kind of created it without actually calling it, say, I mean, obviously they figured out what the goal was, but it set it for myself. And I've done that several places where I just asked, and then over time it became a thing. I just put it like, hey, I want to check in once a year on my performance. So there's kind of ways, like I feel it's acceptable to ask for a regular check-in of your performance, because how do we know that we are successful without getting the opportunity to advocate for ourselves, but also hear directly from someone? And I think this too, if you're someone who's performing well, it can feel unnecessary, right? Like, I'm doing a good job, I get a lot of praise, but at the same point, it never gives you the opportunity to have that moment to actually ask for feedback, receive it, and also talk about goals and accomplishments.
That's a great point, especially if, especially in the startup world, companies don't yet always have structures and processes in place. And it does show leadership value to bring that up to your company. Hey, in past organizations, we've had annual or quarterly check-ins. That's what I'm accustomed to. If we don't have that, how can we work to implement that at our organization?
I love that. I love that perspective. And I also love what Jane just put in the chat. She said you can absolutely drive your own performance cycle. I can remember some times in my own career where I had a really good 6 months, and I thought, I'm not waiting a year. I knew I was underpaid. And so I used that opportunity to say, I've accomplished these things. I need a review. I mean, don't be afraid to do that. Advocate for yourself, all the things that Angela said. One of my favorite things you said, though, was about setting aside modesty. 100% of the women that I talk to go, well, I don't want to seem like I'm bragging on myself, or, any of that. Like, you really have to be able to put that aside. But then the other thing I often hear is, and this just pierces my ears till they bleed, I don't want to cause any trouble. So Angela, how can you advise folks to make good trouble, and how you can sort of frame that up where it can be seen as like, wow, this is my leadership quality, pulling the organization along, that we need to be looking at these things.
You know what? One thing I'll say, Julie, is that men have no problem. They have no problem bragging about themselves all day long. It's striking, actually, the way that they'll speak about themselves, the way that they advocate for themselves, because it's been innately shown to them. And to your point, women are not innately taught that. We don't want to ruffle feathers. We want it to be easy breezy, keep it cool. But like you said, if you've had a phenomenal 6 months, then maybe you don't wait for that annual review period. And maybe while it's really fresh in your mind, and you know that you're underpaid, and you can come armed with that data saying, hey,
Right.
I'm marked as XYZ, and not only am I performing, but I'm underpaid. So we need to write that, write those numbers. So absolutely, I think it just comes down to, again, talking with other women and getting really comfortable
Yeah.
bragging on ourselves, because we have every right to.
Yeah, I love that. Karima, I love what you just put in the chat too. We often see women in the same role as men, and they absolutely know, whether it's over a cocktail that somebody spills the beans and they find out they're making $15,000 less than their counterpart. But this is one of the most common questions I get through LinkedIn on direct messaging. And it is, nervously asking, how do I, when I know somebody's being paid more than me and it's the same job, and this happens to be a white male, and I happen to be a Black woman or a woman of color or a white woman, like, how do I approach that without creating a big, huge tsunami, of a wave?
That one's really tricky, because you really don't want to take, cocktail conversations and bring them to the forefront. I do think talking is important, but there's a line of, like, Is it gossiping or not? So I think the most important thing to do would be to prove to exemplify your value and ask for that same amount. And then if they say if it's not in the budget, then you may say without naming names, you know, others in the company in the same role are paid that.
Yeah, for
So it is
sure.
in the budget.
Yeah, and I think too, leaning into the company's culture, I was at a point in my career where I knew my male counterparts were making more than me. And so I simply asked the question of the senior most person in the company that I was comfortable asking the question to of, does the company have a policy on pay equity? And then Angela, to your very point, shut up. Do not say anything else. Wait for that answer. And then once you get that answer, then you could say, because they're going to tell you that they support pay equity. No one is going to ever admit at a high level in a company that, oh no, we pay our ladies less, So I think it is, like really leaning into that and counting on the system to support you instead of work against you. Show that you're leaning into that to ask the question. And then you can simply, if they say, yes, we do, may I ask to be reviewed?
Absolutely. I think that's fantastic. Leaning into the policies, right? A corporate policy again takes you out of the equation, and you're then advocating for the rest of your team too, and that's really powerful.
Melissa, I love your screensaver. Feel the fear and do it anyway. That's perfect.
Angela, this is great and appreciate all of this. This is like just very timely for me because my mid-year is next week. But I did want to ask you a question. So there's a lot of people that, have been in roles shorter amount of time than me. So I've been with the company 26 years, right? I've been at my level now for about 5 at this current level. But there's people that are coming in that are, have been with the company 6 years. I mean, that brings up a point. They can't be making the same as me, right? But I mean, you don't want to bring that up, but how is that kind of addressed, right? So, or how do you kind of weave that into the equity conversation that Julie just mentioned?
That's a great point, because yes, someone coming into the organization after 6 years, they will likely that compensations increase more when you're taking a job in a new company, a new organization, versus the 2 to 5% pay increases each year. You could ask again, like, not only is there pay equity, but is there some sort of a standard and in terms of compensation, given the tenure of employees? Is there a certain are there certain brackets of tenure that should be evaluated for the longevity of the company? Because yeah, you're probably going to be making less, I'm guessing, just based on where salaries have gone in the last 6 years, and someone coming in new from outside.
Oh,
Exactly. And that's kind of where, like, you don't want to touch on it, but it's out there and it's not, because I'm training these people, right? So I'm training somebody that's probably making more money than I am, which is an issue, right?
That is an issue.
Connie, woo!
That's tough.
I have to say that's just so common. I hear that all the time. Angela, let me ask you, is it appropriate for Connie to want to address the level of skill? Like some people come into that same job with the same years of experience as her, but at another company. But they're coming in higher because of, like you said, where, salaries have gone that 6 years since she's been there. So it seems to me, and please feel free to disagree or correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that it really doesn't have anything to do with the years. It has to do with the level of skill and the level of responsibility. Is that fair?
And the person's negotiation skills, right?
Yeah.
I could be speaking with, we're working on a director of sales right now. And in that position, with that role, there are people asking for 180 and there are people asking for 110. So part of it has to do with, again, knowing your value and advocating for yourself as you're interviewing with a new company. And I would say if you're not able to make any movement with making sure that you're well compensated and at or above market value, then it may be time to step outside and check out other opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Oh gosh, Dawn, I'm just reading your message. I'm going to read this out loud. Or oddly, I just had that exact conversation with my immediate supervisor, my director, as to why my level has remained the same for 4 years that I've been employed with that current company. I was advised that it's due to I am overconfident. I'm sorry. I was floored. I have received our annual raises that were not even close to the raise in the current economics. I've advanced positions and generated the company additional revenue. Angela, I'll just let you take that one.
And so basically they're saying that your attitude is overconfident. I don't even know where to begin with this, to be quite honest. That sounds like a cultural shit show.
It sure does. Thank you for saying that right out loud.
I,
These are women.
I'd have to think about that a little bit, but that's really not acceptable. Overconfidence is why you've been able to generate the company additional revenue. So I would take it back again. That person, your supervisor and director is making it personal. Bring it back to business and state facts. That's and if if they can't get on board with that, I'd look
Start
for
looking.
somewhere that appreciates your overconfidence.
I do
Yeah.
believe it is personal with the director. Julie knows me,
Yeah.
and I am a little bit aggressive and I am very confident. That's my nature and that's how I get things done. And we were at a meeting and it was brought up, something that it just struck me as it shouldn't have been addressed to the team lead, put it that way. So I went to my supervisor about it and I said, that made me feel really undervalued. And I went to her in confidence, and of course she took it to the director, which led to a 45-minute meeting with the two of them. And that was what I was told. And I about fell off my chair. Now my mind's spinning here. So since that occurred, I've been looking. The company I'm with, I won't name names, but they are humongous. They have 150,000 employees across the globe. So you are basically a number. The people up here don't know who you are. So I wonder how much of that is being determined by the director and being pushed up.
Yeah, one thing I would just say here, Dawn, is that I don't want to call it a trick, but something that someone taught me to help me calm myself down so I don't scratch their eyes from their head in that moment is to ask them, tell me a little more about that. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean. And what it does is it causes them, it sets them off on a different path, but it causes them to either double down and repeat again what they said, and then, ask them for examples. Where are you seeing that? And, just you can continue to ask questions that cause them to realize that what they're telling you is very inappropriate.
Yeah, I think, a lot of it's, like I said, I was just flabbergasted. And the company doesn't do well overall with increases. To be honest, they, bring in at a 2.1% annual when the economy's is 4.1% increase, things like that. Now they do a phenomenal job of donating a ton of money to a bunch of charities and helping everybody else out, but their employees, they don't really take care of too well, and we're the ones generating the revenue. So, and it's a Canadian-based company, which throws a whole nother thing, you know,
Right.
rent. So, yeah, it was a situation, and I'm still kind of, you know, trying to go through my mind on how I'm going to deal with it moving forward. I agree with you, Julie. I want examples. You know, I want to know why that is, and where's this coming from, and are the clients complaining, are, you know, and it very well may be that maybe she feels threatened.
Right.
You know, I've ran into that before, and that could be the case.
Right.
So Dawn, what you may want to think about is calling another meeting and saying, you know what, I just cannot get what you said out of my head. I've really been thinking about it, and I'd like to dive into it a little bit more so I can understand if there's a behavior that I'm doing that's inappropriate, if there's been a complaint, or what made you say that?
Yeah.
For
So
I think
sure.
you deserve it. And I
so-
think if you're not appreciated, you're right in looking elsewhere.
Oh, I got my eyes open, trust me.
So I'm sorry to cut that off. Christy, I know you're ready to move to the breakout sessions. We highly value the networking time that we have on the call. So Christy, or actually, I think it's Kendra, you're going to break us out.
Yeah, Kendra's going to break us all into small groups. There'll be someone who will kind of lead the conversation, help everybody intro themselves, and then we'll pop back over here to just end the call together. Thank you, Angela, so much for all your time.
Everybody,
support.
have a beautiful Friday.
Thank you.
Cheers.
I think it's got most of us. Welcome back, everyone. I think it has most of us back in here. I hope that you all, they always go fast in those breakout rooms. We're still trying to figure out the perfect amount of time. Juggling that so everybody can get a chance to talk and share. I highly encourage you to add the 6-7 people that were in your group on LinkedIn, find each other there. And then before we close, I just wanted to kind of chat through quickly. If you haven't been involved with us for a very long time, there's a lot of ways you can get involved and get to know everybody better. We have a LinkedIn private group that if you're a member, you can come and join and feel like you have a private place to discuss topics just like we were talking about today. There's a lot of really great minds built in this group, a lot of different perspectives, a lot of people who can answer questions, help you network. There's a book club going on currently, so you can find out more information about that on the LinkedIn page. Encourage you to find members, connect with us, connect with me, connect with Julie. We want you to feel engaged and like you have a lot of friends in this industry. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and I hope to see many of your faces again on next month's meeting.